All right, welcome back. We are OOP3200. That's Object-Oriented Programming 2 in the fall 2020 semester at Durham College. And it is week 8, part 1 of our broadcast, probably the only part again for this one. We're going to be talking about Java today. So again, I think we're doing, this should say week 8 overview, not week 7. What we're doing today is we're working on installing Intellij IDEA, what that is, installing Java, and talking about what Java is. And we're going to do an in-class exercise today. That's our plan for this week. If we look at the schedule where we're sitting right now, we're sitting at week 8. Again, it's November 4th, the day after the crazy US election that still hasn't been settled. And we have an in-class exercise worth 2% this week. Notice that there is a Java assignment 1, which is your Java Lab 1, that is going to be happening next week. So that's normally what we'll do is I give it to you on Wednesday, and you have until Sunday to get it done. Java assignments, just like C++ assignments, are done in pairs. All right, so this is kind of where we are right now. Notice this takes us down until week 12. There's more weeks than this, so just bear with me as we go forward. I'll continue to update you on where we're at and what we're doing. Okay, so today it's really simple. We're going to kind of do an intro to Java. Java, just to start off, before we move anything from here, is a object-oriented language. It's object-oriented first, I would say. And it's different than C++ or C# in that one thing I want you to remember when it comes to Java is that in C# everything is private by default. That's the default thing for classes and objects. They're all private. Java, not so. It's all public, which is something different. So by default, everything is public. And one thing also to note is the way we do getters and setters in Java is very similar to how we do getters and setters in C++. We use get, set, but a get method or set method, those kind of things. The other thing that you're going to find that's different in Java, and I'm just going to let you know ahead of time before we move into objects and everything else that we're doing over the next couple of weeks. And notice I'm talking about classes and objects, and that's like the subject of week 11. But I'm going to show you some stuff early, kind of a preview of what objects look like now, way early. And the reason for this is because you've already done object-oriented programming. So really, at the end of the day, the stuff that you're doing with me is, kind of a review of syntax for Java. If I was going to make a Java course different than this one, I would, especially for you guys, I would say Java for C++/C# developers, and you'd be getting into objects and classes right away, right? Because at the end of the day, you know about these things. They're not different necessarily than in Java than anything else. So one thing that you're going to notice is default arguments. If you try doing default arguments in Java, and I recommend you play around with it, it doesn't support default or optional arguments like C++ and C#, or even JavaScript. It recommends that you would do overloads. That's JavaScript, Java's method to do it. Let me go back into this. So what we're going to be doing this semester is we're going to use a different IDE the second half. We're going to use IntelliJ IDEA, at least I will. There's other IDEs you can use as well. But I recommend this one. I think this is a good one to go with. If you go to the JetBrains website, let's go there together. So I'm pulling this up here. Here it is. And we'll just pull my live stream away. The JetBrains website basically says, look, you can download IntelliJ IDEA. If you click on download, there are 2 options. One of them is Ultimate, and it says free 30-day trial. The other one is Community, which is open source for anyone to use. I think this is great. The difference between one and the other, you get profiling tools and a bunch of other frameworks here that you can use. So some stuff that you can do, as well as some really good IntelliSense equivalent tools on the left. but the basics, everything that you need to run Java, you get with the Community Edition. So worst case, even if you don't want to download and install the Ultimate version, which I recommend, then you're still good with the Community version. The way you can download the Ultimate version and keep it, like I mentioned in the past, is by registering as a student. So again, if you go to Education JetBrains, if I just look that up, right, then it'll take you to this JetBrains Community Free Educational Licenses area. And since we're students and teachers, this is where we qualify for. Then, like I said before, you should apply now to get your free educational license. It doesn't just include JetBrains. It doesn't just include Intellij. You have access to the entire suite of products here, which is pretty cool, like C++ tools, everything from their WebStorm, which is an excellent IDE for web development, ReSharper C++, which I've talked about in the first half of semester, as well as ReSharper C#, if you're into giving refactoring for C# and so on. There's a bunch of really cool tools that it comes with, .trace and .cover, and a bunch of other stuff. So, I mean, totally worth it downloading it and going through the educational pathway, so that way you get all the tools that we can use for educational purposes for free, which is really good. So that's kind of our first thing that we do, is we download and install this. So please, if you haven't had a chance to do this now, please download Intellij IDEA and run it. Okay. The other thing you're going to need is Java, and Nick was kind enough to say, hey, by the way, it says, Jackie also says, license expires next year, October, it's not forever. It does, you can renew it, Jackie. You can renew it as long as you're a student. So it'll run forever as long as you're a student. How about that? Okay, so the thing that you want to go through here with is, the next part is Java. And the Java download I put in here as well, but if I was going to say something like download Java Jdk, which is what you want, because you need to run Java Jdk in the background, notice it takes me to Oracle. So if I click on this, it shows me that there's a JDK download for SE15. This is okay, right? If I click download, it's going to give me this little message that says, hey, by the way, we've got an agreement now that Java's changed, right? And they talk about here how Java now is being owned in whole by Oracle. At one point, Java was free and open source, not anymore. And so when you download recent versions of Java, and a good example of this is if you look at down here in the installation, the Java SDK or SC development kit, which is what they call it now, then there is an area here which is Windows 6 x64 installer down here in the bottom, which you should install. All right, so that's the one. It also allows you to do it right through JetBrains, but the Intellij IDEA stuff. But this is something you want to do ahead of time. Why? Because without Java, you can't run or compile anything, and which is what we need to do. So please, if you haven't had a chance to do that, let's get that installation done right away. Okay, that's what I recommend. I've already done my installation, and I have Intellij IDEA here. I'm going to bring it up. My version is 2020.2, and when you start off Intellij, it starts off like this. So can we, I'm just going to wait until you guys are ready for this. So can I get you guys to do this? By the way, if you don't want to use, let's say you don't want to use Intellij IDEA, I mean, I will accept other things as well. In terms of marking, though, Intellij IDEA would be the easiest way, for we all share the same thing. Just like Visual Studio 2019. I use Visual Studio 2019 for all your marking, right? So it's easier. However, I cannot but talk about other installations as well while you're doing this one. Netbeans is also a very good environment for you to do Java. In fact, Netbeans, which is again free for you to download, I think it's a really great IDE as well. You can't go wrong by downloading and installing Netbeans. I think it's good. It's got great support, and again, it's free to use. So this is not another bad one. I think this is a really good IDE. The other one that's been used for years is Eclipse, and I have to talk about Eclipse as it was used to be the main platform of choice to program for Java, as well as for this is Eclipse FX. Let me just go to eclipse.org and get the right link here. So this is the Eclipse Foundation. Eclipse again is free, and there's nothing wrong with using Eclipse as well. The challenge with Eclipse is I find it still a little bit unstable compared to Intellij IDEA or Netbeans. But for many years, Eclipse, which was run, again, managed by IBM, or supported by IBM, I always have to say, was very, very popular. And even for Android development, Eclipse was one of the main IDEs. So I think between these three, Netbeans and Intellij IDEA, I would say probably, to me, my favorite is Intellij IDEA because it's so close to Android Studio. And if you're going to be doing anything with Android development, then once you learn one of the platforms, whether it's Intellij IDEA, Android Studio, CLine, WebStorm, whatever, the environment is the same. So you can transfer your skills that you're learning for your IDE to any one of those things. And if I go to Android Studio for a second, so if I go Android Studio, it's also made by JetBrains, right? So this is how much support it's getting from Google. Google, kind of chose JetBrains for them to make, an IDE specifically for Android development. So they get lots of support here, guys. And the other thing that I think is really great is that JetBrains also kind of was involved in creating Kotlin, which is a Java alternative for Android development. So if you look at Kotlin, Kotlin.org, again, notice that it's got that the same kind of branding, but Kotlin is a short form, a quick way of kind of another language that's been created specifically to work with Android, and it's also been created, and to combat the fact that Oracle has bought Java. So Google has been challenged by Oracle. Oracle's been saying to Google, you've been using Java for free for a long time, and it's time now that you pay. And there was a kind of a conflict between Oracle and Google, where Google said, look, we had permission from the people who owned Java before, the community, and they said that we can use Java for forever for our Google platform, our Android. And Oracle says, show me the information. And Google basically sent off this thing that says, look, we have an email. That's all they had. An email that said everything's okay, but no formal agreement. And because of that, it's gone to court, and Oracle has won. And basically what's happening is that Google is going to migrate everything away from Java into Kotlin, which is a brand new language, like I said before, that's very Java-like. And what they're going to do is they're going to use Kotlin for their main language for Android development and move away from Java. So, again, it developed by JetBrains, same people that made everything else, and that's why I feel confident in telling you that I think, using Intellij IDEA is the right approach, because this way you're going to have the right platform that's got good support by Google and the community. It's a good IDE. There's nothing wrong with it, and you're going to have good results. Okay, so that's kind of my justification for going there and not Netbeans or Eclipse. Why not Microsoft? And this is something that I get sometimes with people ask me, like, why not Microsoft? Does Microsoft Visual Studio support Java? Yeah, you can download extensions, but the support is minimal. And to me, it's just not the right platform, right? You got to think about the challenge here. Visual Studio is made by Microsoft for C# and C# developers and C++ primarily, right? Them to support Java, which is really Java C# is Java, Microsoft's Java, right? That's what it is, right? In many ways. And so the two languages were in competition for a while, right? So I'm not sure that there's a lot of motivation for Microsoft to support Java development on their Visual Studio 2019 IDE. Not as much as, let's say, for example, these guys who are all in, right? So that's why, you know, we got to use the best tool for the job, just like any technician. I think it's the same thing for us. Okay, that's enough talk about the whys that we're doing. Let's get back to Intellij. All right, so have you installed, check marks here, have you installed Intellij IDEA and the Java Jdk? If you haven't, please put an X, because this will, you know, and if you are doing it right now and you need me to slow down, use the go slower tag here, the icon in your participants panel. Okay, so I see most of you have. Jordan's still installing. Muzda, you're still installing. Okay, so I'm going to wait a little bit longer for you guys, but while we're starting, what I want you to do is, for the people that are watching here, most of you are ready to go. I've got, out of 18 participants, I've got 11 that are responding, guys. And I'm hoping that most of you can respond as well, so I know where we're at. Okay. If you don't know where the panel is to respond, again, click the participants panel link for yourself, and you can see the responses now. I'm getting a bit more responses. All right, I'm going to move on. I've tried to wait as long as I can. I don't want to hold everyone back. So Jordan and Muzda, hopefully you'll catch up with the video, or you'll catch up afterwards. I'm recording this, of course, as well as I'm going to put it up on GitHub in a bit. All right, so I'm going to click configure. Let's go into configure first. So notice that there's a bunch of options. One of them is settings. Let's go to settings together. So settings. Settings is going to tell you things like your appearance. I've chosen Dracula theme. There's different kinds of themes you can choose. High contrast supports that as well. Menus and toolbars. It talks about you know, how the toolbars look. You can set up your toolbars and manage them the way you like. This is really cool, which means you can make your menus and toolbars customized the way your IDE looks. I'm also going to go into editor, I think now. I'm going to skip over this to editor. And under editor, you're going to see font. So if you want to make your editor look like mine, I'm using JetBrains Mono, and the size is 20 points so that you guys can see what I'm seeing. So this is what the size that I'm using. You can modify this as well. There's lots of really cool stuff that is all built in. Version control is the next thing. I want to go skip into version control for a second. And under version control, I'm using Git. All right, so one thing to note is that you cannot use Git like I'm using it as an example, unless you have Git installed on your command line. All right, so that's something that we may or may not have installed properly. Git Hub is something that I've connected to, and you can actually click the plus button here to add or version control GitHub. I want you to go here and log in via GitHub. All right, this is kind of an important step. What this will do is allow you to connect to GitHub and push your stuff to GitHub. One thing that this doesn't come with by default is the Git installation, which means in order for you to push things directly from here to GitHub, as an example, you either have to have Git installed locally. You know, I think that's the main thing, and the way to do that is there is another site that I recommend you go to, and we may have mentioned this in the past, but I'm going to go here. This is all installation steps here. So if you go to git-scm.com, so this is your installation for Git locally on your machine. I would say that this is not a bad idea to do for Windows users. If you're a Mac user, as an example, and you're taking this course, it's possible in the second half you can do everything with Mac and not use a Windows machine at all, because Java is cross-platform, and the Intellij IDE is also cross-platform. This is the advantage they have over Microsoft Windows Visual Studio 2019, which is not the same across different platforms. So again, if you want to download this, as an example, this will set things up. In order for you to do this, make sure that your command prompt is closed, so you don't have a command prompt or a terminal window up. And this is primarily for Windows users. If you're a Mac user or a Linux user, you have Git installed locally already, so you don't have to do anything. But if you're a Windows user and you want support right through your IDE to push to Git and GitHub, please make sure you download and install this. And I'm going to put this link on our up online inside of our course. Right, so I'm going to go to content, and I'm going to go to our week 8. This is where we're at. And underneath the in-class exercise area, I'm going to put a link to a Git installation. Right, so again, this will be local Git install. Okay, it's really important you do this. If you don't, and if you want to push stuff, sometimes it won't work properly without going here and doing that. There are some options when you install Git, and again, if you follow along, it's not difficult. I mean, really, you're pressing next, next, next the entire time. There's not a lot that you need here for your use, right? So it's not a difficult install. It's literally just following along with the prompts. All right, so that is the requirements for Git and GitHub. And what you may have to do after you install Git locally is you may have to restart your Intellij IDEA, or if you go to the Git under version control, then what you need to do is, it says auto detected. Mine was auto detected, but you may have to put in your folder path for Git. And notice what happens is it says mine is under C programs git command git.exe. Again, it's got to be something like this where it can find your path, and if it doesn't, then kind of doing version control locally will fail. And I don't want that to happen for you, because you're going to need to push everything for your labs coming up. So that's why this is an important step for us. All right, so hopefully you've got that confirmed. Let's go to the next one. So there's build, execution, and deployment. Okay, so build, execution, deployment. Build tools, if you go here, you're going to see that this says reload project after changes in build scripts. Yes, I agree. Notice that there's something called Gradle. Gradle is something that we use as a package manager. We use this for things like installing packages. We won't be doing that too much. But if you're building Android applications, then you use Gradle on a regular basis. I'm going to skip down here where it says Java Profiler. So there's something called a Java Flight Recorder that's built in. We don't need to do anything here. I'm showing you what this thing is, okay? There's also languages and frameworks, and you can see that the languages and frameworks that that are supported here for me are because I've got the Pro version, the one that's the unlocked version through the educational program, right? So it shows you TypeScript, JavaFX, JavaScript, different schemas, and so on. If you see something that looks like this, you're in good shape. Okay, tools. It looks like there are a bunch of options for tools we're not going to go into, web services and so on. So these are all different options inside settings. I'm just going to skip all the way back up to the top. I'm just going to close off editor and version control, build tools, and so on. Get all these things closed up. What about plugins? Plugins, you should have a bunch. One of them, you can notice that there's a Kotlin plugin built in when you download and install this stuff. You can see that there are database connectors, deployment tools, Docker, which is bundled along with this thing. That's why it's so great, this application, right? So Node.js, if you're doing JavaScript and so on, and JVM frameworks to help you with different libraries and so on, Java EE, so enterprise, and so on. There's like tons of stuff here that it includes, and I think this is why this is a great tool. Okay, so these are all the things that it covers. Okay, so lots and lots of stuff. Okay, so that's kind of a tour of this part. Notice also it covers Perforce for version control, and Git, GitHub, Mercurial, Subversion, like every kind of pretty much most popular tools that are out there right now. All right, we're good. I'm going to click OK for here, and I'm going to go back to configure. So I'm just going through this thing. It talks about structure for new projects. Let's go there. Structure for new projects. It says project. And notice it says project SDK, and there's no SDK selected. Now, I have both Java 1.8 and OpenJDK 15. You can choose one or the other. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to choose this one, OpenJDK 15. It says I must accept the agreement. I'm going to do that. What this does is by default, you're going to have a default project SDK. It says the SDK is default for all project modules, and that's why I left it here for a while. Libraries. Notice that there's no extra libraries. You can include your own. SDKs. Here's your settings. Notice that there are, I have 2, 1.8, and OpenJDK 15. You should have at least one of these. I'm thinking this one, all right, when you install this thing for the first time. If you don't have this here, you can add it, and you can specify a path. Mine is installed under JDKs. So .jdk's OpenJDK 15 is also going to detect it a lot of times on its own. All right, so that's kind of how this thing works. Let's continue. So I'm going to go back. And again, you can see that by default, you know, I've chosen OpenJDK. All right, what else? So what else is import and export settings? If you have previous versions of the Intellij IDEA framework, settings repository that is here, and a bunch of other things that we can do later. Check for updates. You should do that on a regular basis. If there is an update, as an example, then it'll show it when you launch anyway. And now let's do our first project before we get closer to getting our ICE done. So let's go with new project for a second. By default, you should see something that looks like this, okay? Do you? Are you seeing something that looks like this with OpenJDK 15 up here? Check mark if you do, X if you don't, you know. And the reason why I'm asking this, guys, is because we can't continue. Like, you're going to just fall behind and won't be able to do this exercise at all coming up. All right, so hopefully I've got 6 respondents. 1 says no. So, Jackie, what are you seeing? Again, you can select this. You can also notice it says download JDK. If you don't see something up here, click this. Click download JDK, and it'll do it for you. That's another thing. It'll try and fix itself, all right, if you haven't had a chance to. So click this link right here, download JDK. All right, so, and then hopefully you guys are fixed. Again, I'm only seeing some of you respond. There are 17 people here. I'm getting 10 responses, guys. This is not always the best. I need to know if you guys are good. And you're going to ask me questions on Discord later, and you're going to say, oh, Tom, my installation doesn't work. You have to get this done. All right, so once we're past this point, don't select anything here. You don't need to select Groovy or anything else in here. It's not really required. Not even a library. Notice I don't even have a library. It's not specifiable. I don't have a library. I'm going to click, let me just do a couple things. Let me just shut this down. And I'm also, one thing I should probably do also is in my Discord channel, I'm going to also just put myself on D&D just because we're going to be doing stuff together, right? And I can't really respond right now. So yeah, so let's click on next with me. Please do that. Okay, so the next part, you're going to get to this screen, and it says create from template. I want to click this. We only have one template right now, which is command line app. Okay, that's the one I want to use. And then I want to click next. So again, command line app, and then next. I don't know D&D, exactly, can't play D&D. Okay, project name, this is important. So let's do this together. So for you, it's going to be, again, OOP3200, right? And again, I'm going to do dash F2020, and then it's lesson 8, right? That's what it's going to be. This is the one that you're going to use for your in-class exercise today. When you hand it in, when we're doing this together. Now, base package, take a look at this. I've got ca.durham college. Please do the same. You type that in. And I'll talk about what packages are in a second. It tells me where my location is for my stuff, which is good. And then when you're ready to go, when you've got these 3 things in here, then press finish. By the way, if you're watching this and you're somewhere else, you can put in your own base package. All right, when you do that, it's going to pull up our little IDE, and notice what happens is it's still working. Let me talk about this a little bit, not to program right now, just to talk about my setup here for everybody so you can see what's going on. Okay, so what I've got here on the left is your project navigator. That's what's in here. All right, you've also got structure here. All right, so libraries and stuff. You can turn it on and off by clicking these on and off guys. Same thing with project. You can, if you want more real estate to do your editor, you can turn these off and on. Right. On the bottom, favorites, you can turn those off and on. Right, breakpoints and so on. On the right, there's databases. You can turn that off and on. Ant, which is kind of a debugger, right? And basically, that's it. I mean, this is your terminal. Oh, terminal is down here, which gives you a terminal window, right? Like right with in the project itself, so you can do terminal commands in here. Any kind of to-dos, right? If you put to-do inside your code, it'll find all the to-do items. Like I'm talking about like a comment. It'll find them for you. Any kind of problems it finds will come up here. So this is kind of the way the IDE works and looks. So kind of very straightforward. If I want to run it on the top right, just like we have in Microsoft's Visual Studio, you have this big run button. That's what it looks like. And what you should be able to do is run this by default. However, sometimes you need to go through a run configuration for the first time. I may not have to do that, but you may. And if I click onto this and I run it right now, it'll run the code. It doesn't do anything right now. It'll bring up a little terminal window that says process finished with exit code 0. So this is what you should see, okay? If you try it out. Again, if you don't want to see this thing, you can just go over to the right and hide it. You can also press Shift Escape to get out of it. So if I press Shift Escape, you can see that it hides that, the run result. Or you can click this little run icon or tab right here on the bottom. Okay. So it really didn't do anything, but then there's nothing for us to do. On the left, we're going to open up this little tab right here, this little thing that's collapsed. And notice that there's 3 little folders that it looks like. Idea, we're not going to touch that. Out, we're not going to touch that. And SRC, that is where we're going to work. Now, if we open this up in the SRC folder, notice that there is ca.Durham College. This is kind of our package. That's what it's called, right? So notice in here we have our main. This is our main.java file. That's what we're working within. And it tells us that right here, main.java, okay? And so we can do all of our testing and everything in here. Notice that package is ca.Durham College. What package is think about this as a namespace in C# or in C++. Okay, that's what a package would be for you guys. Are you with me? Check marks if you've got this far and you've been able to run stuff and everything else. I know I'm going through it really slow, guys. I really apologize for people who are super fast and know what they're doing and they've done this before and you're bored already. But I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page because you guys will be working with this stuff as we go forward. Thank you for that feedback. All right, so pretty cool. We got this going. We're going to come back to this. Let's get back to the PowerPoint for a second. All right, let's go back to this. So we've done our installation at this point. You've already installed JetBrains. This is the assumption at this point in the video or the thing that you're watching, as well as you've installed Java and perhaps Git. Okay, those are the things that you've done. So let's talk about Java a little bit and what it is. So again, really popular object-oriented programming language, I would say. And one thing that I have to talk about when it comes to Java is, for many years, Java was considered the king of all languages. Okay, and I got to talk about this because there are more jobs when it comes to Java, maybe out there, to get Java jobs, programming in Java, than almost any other programming language out there. All right, Java, Python, C++, C#, again, those are all popular languages. JavaScript, TypeScript now is coming up. Swift for iOS development is still coming forward, but Java, if you look at the most popular programming languages, let's just do a search, right, and see what happens. If I say, most popular programming languages, if I just pull that up, I mean, you're going to see, look, Java is like #1. I didn't even do anything to get this result, and I didn't mean to do it. It's like literally I just click on the first link that it comes up with, and this is from June of 2020. right in COVID, and we're looking at, one of the most popular languages is Java at number 3, it looks like. Python, of course, number of jobs it says is 19,000 as of June. JavaScript, really popular language. Java, before C#, much before. Look at, from a jobs perspective, 18,000 jobs for C#, 29,000 jobs for Java. Java is used in enterprise a lot. And what I mean by enterprise is banks, governments, institutions, things like that. Java is being used a lot by them. Why is it being used? C, and there's C++ right here. You can see like C++ is fairly low. Although it's definitely improving in 2020, C++ has really gone up a lot, right? Whereas before it was really low because it's so difficult. So why are you learning Java now, and why didn't you learn Java first thing? Because let's face it, Java is like I said, king of all languages when it comes to enterprise. Python is really popular because of machine learning. And JavaScript is really popular because it's the language of the web. But Java would be the number one programming language, right? When it comes to programming applications. Java is found in so many different applications, and most of your phones are powered by Java right now, right? Still. So that's huge. A couple things to note about Java is it's cross-platform, similar to the other languages. C++, C# is becoming cross-platform. It's got great support now on the major platforms that are out there. But again, this is something that's happened recently. I would say recently, over the last 5 years or so, recently. Whereas Java has been kind of cross-platform from the beginning. Java had a great community, that's out there because it was open source for a long, long time. It's portable, like it says here. It's multi-threaded, and it's safe. It's a safe language to program in. And the reason for this is because we don't have to worry so much about memory management in Java. One thing to note is Java, just like C#, we're not going to deal with pointers for the most part. So pointers and all that stuff, that's all C++ and C, right? It's not something that we work with on Java at all, right? Java does things the Java way. And, one thing that we're going to learn in this course is syntax more than anything else, not necessarily concepts, like as in what's a variable. I'm not going to go there. We need to learn how to tap into libraries that exist already. So notice the last thing we did with C++ was we talked about the standard template library. And here in Java, there is a library, a great, kind of a number of libraries we tap into that we're going to get into this, right? So one thing to note is that like C#, it's object-oriented. Unlike C# or C++, it's multi-paradigm, which means you can use object-oriented programming with Java. You can use functional programming. You can do reactive programming. There's lots of ways of using Java, and it's very flexible. Java, of course, was also used to create games. Good example of that is Minecraft. It's one of the first, kind of really popular games, comes off the top of my head. And then libgdx is a Java framework that you can use if you want to make games, using the Java language, which is pretty cool. Okay, so that's Java. One thing that we're going to do is we run within something called a Java virtual machine, or JVM. And what happens is the Java compiler takes our Java source code that we write and kind of converts it into bytecode, right? And then what happens is the Java program uses this thing called the Java interpreter that inspects each of the bytecode and executes each of the actions inside the JVM. So it's almost like we're having a little virtual machine that's running when we're running our program. So this is another reason why Java is super safe. It's not going to knock down your machine. C++ can knock down your machine if you're not careful, right? It has low-level access to your memory, right? So if I allocate memory with C++, I'm making, for example, an OpenGL program or something, or maybe I've got a program that's running out of control with some kind of recursive functionality or something like that, or maybe I'm using a multi-threaded program that's using a bunch of threads. I could crash my computer. It's possible, right? With C++. Java, not so much. Right, C#, same. It's pretty hard to crash your entire computer with one of these two languages, right? So this is why it's safe to work in. It's a good environment, safe environment. So again, if you notice, the great thing also about the JVM is it can work. It's another reason why it's got good cross compatibility. Why? Because it doesn't matter on the back end what your compiler looks like. The compiler might be platform specific, but the JVM is common, right? So that means I can compile on a Mac OS machine or a Linux machine or Windows machine. Okay, so really kind of right there. When it comes to the JDK, you already got that. The JDK is the Java Development Kit, which is separate. So when you download and install your stuff for the IDE, it's something that you can use different versions of the JDK, just like we do with C++, C++11, C++17, C++20, and so on. Here we can do the same thing with our Java Development Kit or Java Jdk. Also, alternatively, it's been known as the SDK or Software Development Kit, and now it's the SE, right, as Oracle calls it. How is Java structured? Well, it's just like everything else you've seen. You have a bunch of files ending with Java. All the files end with Java, and you can see that you have several classes. As an example, class myProgram, class coat, class shoe, class sock, class hat, as an example. And there's the complete program in 5 files. And again, from a consistency perspective, using the Java extension, there is no .h or .cpp. Everything is a .java. All right, so that's something to note as well. When it comes to starting off our program, all of our programs, just like in C#, as an example, use a class by default. It's wrapped inside of a class. It's not like how C++ is formatted in that you don't need an initial class. You just need a function main, right? Here we have a class by default that is our main function is embedded within. And notice it's a static main function. Again, very similar to C#, or I should say C# is very similar to Java, as in Java came first, right? So that's where we kind of run. Think about our program class, and again, I'm just going to jump back to Intellij for a second while I talk about this. Think about our program class here, public static void main, this part. This is our driver program. That's what this is, right? So I'm going to call this the driver program, just like I would in C#, right? So even though our public class is called main, we have a main static method, and this is very similar to what you've seen in C++. This is your entry point. Anything that happens here happens first, and you need an entry point in Java, just like you do in C# and even in C++. Okay, so that's the entry point. Let's keep going. So we have when it comes to accessing things, like I want to output to the console, we need to use something called the system class. Okay, the system class. So let's do that together. Again, we're going to do a little bit more interactivity this time around. So I'm going to go here, and where it says write your code here, I'm going to start typing system. And notice I get really good code hinting, guys. Take a look at the code hinting I'm getting. As soon as I'm typing stuff in, I'm getting something that's hovering. It's staying on the page. If I don't like my code hinting, press escape. It'll go away. You can dismiss it like that, just like you would in C++ or in C#. Notice I'm also getting an error immediately. So it's basically saying something's wrong. Everything is underlined in red because I'm in the middle of typing something. System dot. Everything is through the dot accessor method here. There is no dash, arrow, or anything like that. Everything is dot accessor. Okay. Notice that out is the recommendation, right? Out is to the print stream. Okay. Notice there's system.console, system.exit, system.getEnvironment. If I want to get the environment variables. Get properties, system.load, system.setIn. There's a bunch of different things, system.logger. What we want to use, of course, is system.out. And .out is like cout, if you think about this. But we're just kind of highlighting it with system. So if I go system.out, that's the next part, system.out dot. And then you can see that out itself has a bunch of different methods. The print line method, the print method, and everything is overloaded. All right, these are all the overloads as well. And like I said earlier today in the course, one thing that's different about Java than about C# is there are no optional parameters. You need a bunch of overloads. That's how it works. That's how the optional parameters work. Okay. So if you notice here, it says you can do different things, close and flush and so on. We're going to kind of talk about some of these things in this semester. We don't have a lot of time to talk through Java. Again, it's kind of an intro to Java we're doing in the second half. But you notice there's a bunch of stuff. What we want is system.out.println, and we'll type it. So if I start typing println, notice it starts filling up. And now here are all the different overloads. One of them even takes nothing, right? So these are all overloaded constructors of the println method, right? Again, I'm going to open this up, and let's just do our classic hello world. So we'll say hello, comma, world, right? And maybe I can spell it properly. And you guys should be doing hello world with me. Notice that when I click onto this, there's a little light bulb that comes up, similar to what we had in on Visual Studio 2019. If I kind of click down there, it says add on-demand static import for Java Lang system. If I click this, it's going to do this, import static Java Lang system. This is like using a using statement, right? And what this does is it allows us to remove the system class from the name. So we don't have to always type system, okay? And so all we have to do is out.println. Okay, I'm going to undo that change for now. Again, I'm not a big fan of hiding those kind of things. But if I was doing a lot of system stuff, that makes sense. Okay, so now let's run it. So we'll save it, and we'll run it. And let's see what happens when we run this thing. You should get hello world down here. Okay. All right, I'm going to go back to talk about this with you. Are you with me? Did you do a hello world, guys? Check mark if you're good, X if you're not good. So why am I going so slow? Because, you know, for whenever we get together with students and they're like, yeah, I tried it, but my stuff wasn't working during your lab and bad things are happening and I couldn't make things go. And now I've got to do this lab together with my partner and I have no idea how this works. Hey guys, this is a great opportunity now to put this up on GitHub. Whoa, this is the next step in our little lab for today. Because one thing is, let's put this up on GitHub. So I'm going to go to VCS. That's at the top here. Now this is where you may or may not work. All right, so I'm going to go to VCS. And notice it says there's a couple things here. One is enable version control integration. Okay, I cannot do version control without doing this. Okay, I need to do this. Enable version control integration. This is equivalent to doing a git init. So let's click on this. It's going to say, hey, what version control do you want me to do, right? Now, I've only installed Git, but if you had Perforce or Subversion or Mercurial or anything like that in here, you could choose one of those version control systems, right? I'm going to choose Git and press OK. When I do that, it's going to make a new Git repository, and it tells me so. It says, hey, look, at the bottom right, left, it says Git repository in C:\users me OneDrive, this desktop, OOP3200, and there's my thing right there, right? So this is my local Git repository. When I do so, I have a new tab that appears down here called my Git tab, and it just did exactly that, git init. You can see the command right here, okay? Next, I'm going to go back to VCS, and now I have some other options. I have a commit tab. I have an update project tab. I have a Git tab, which does allow a lot of these, right? As an example. So you can see that I have a lot of different things here that I can do. I have a Git add, all right, and all those kind of things. Now, what I want is I want to push this up to GitHub, right? But right now, we notice that there is the one thing I need to put in. First of all, there's local history. I can show local history here, which shows me what my local, what's happened. Here's my main Java. These are the changes that I made. Really cool stuff. It does a diff. A diff means I look at the original file and then you can see things in green that have been added, and anything that I remove will be shown in red, which is kind of cool. All right, so kind of a side-by-side comparison of files. Only one file is changed. That's why I only see this one file. If I had more than one file changed, you can see the differences between the files. Really, really cool. All right, so that's great. Again, let's go back up to VCS, and that's local history. So there's also a VCS operations pop-up, which allows me to do things like a commit, right? I can also do a push, right, which is what I want to do next. Let's commit first. So I want to do my commit, right? In my commit, remember what a commit is. It's like a snapshot of my files, right? So I want to call this my initial commit. I put my commit message here and then click commit if there was something to put. Now notice that I haven't really chosen anything on the left. It says unversioned files. There's 10 of them, right? I'm going to open this up, click all of these, right? These are all the things that I'm committing, including my main.java and a bunch of other stuff. And then I'm going to click. Notice that this now triggers. If it was before like this, notice that commit wasn't even available to me. It was like grayed out. But as soon as I go click here and I show you the change list, this is the change list, now suddenly commit becomes available. All right. And there's a little down button as well where I can commit and push. I'm just going to click commit for now. So let's do that. Commit. When I do, all my local changes have been committed, right? So there's nothing to commit. It says 10 files committed, initial commit. Let's take a look at this little Git area here, and it tells me there's a little log of what's happened. All right, so this is kind of showing me my little log here. All right. Again, I'm going through this with you, and it is being recorded. So this is something that I want you to see so that you guys are good. Again, for me to do what I'm doing, you have to have Git installed locally on your machine. If you don't, or if you did it after you started Intellij IDEA, then restart Intellij IDEA. It should pick it up. All right, so that is Git. And what I want to do now is push. So let's go back to VCS, and I want to go to push, right? Notice that there is a commit, but there isn't a push operation. Why? We haven't configured a remote connection. We haven't done that, right? So I can't push. There's no place to push right now, right? And which is something that we have to think about, right? Remember how Git and GitHub works. Git is local. GitHub is the cloud service that we want to push to, right? But we don't have anything to push to. So if I go to VCS again, and if I go to VCS operations pop-up, or you can go to Git and do it this way, right? Both ways are fine. Let's do it with the menu. Git, push. It's going to say, well, I don't really have a remote. My remote is something that I need to define. And if I click on define remote, and if you did the configuration in the beginning where you connected yourself to GitHub, then you should see, here's my origin, and this is my URL. Okay, this is something that you can do. Now, where is this URL coming from? GitHub. We need to make one on GitHub. It doesn't do it automatically like Visual Studio does. So let's go back onto GitHub. And we've done this before, hopefully. So if I go to github.com / for me, Durham programmer, for you, it's going to be your account. All right, this is for your ICE 6, right? Ours is going to be ICE 7. So I'm going to make a new one. I'm going to make it public, and it's going to be OOP3200 F2020. I'm going to call this ICE 7, right? And I'm going to click create repository, nothing else. When I do, I'm going to get a couple of things. This is what I need. This link right here is what I need, right? So I'm going to copy this link. I'm going to go back to IntelliJ and paste it in. Okay, this is the link. So I got this link when I created my GitHub repo online. When I do this and I press OK, it's going to basically have this repo in. It'll show the connection, right, to the repository. This is the connection to the repository, right? So out production OOP, it shows you the connection here, right? Oh, this is all the local repository that I'm going to go to. Here's my initial commit, and then I'm going to click push. When I do, it may ask you for the first time to log in to GitHub if you haven't done this before. Otherwise, it's just going to push to the master branch by default. It's that simple. Now, after I've done this the first time, it's literally just a commit and push every single time. You can actually do a commit and push in one if you want to do that as well. Okay, let's do the next part. To prove that, I'm going to go up to GitHub now and refresh. And you can see now that I have my repository. This is what it looks like. And I have several folders here. One of them is source CA Durham College. Notice that this is in reverse DNS order, right? Source is the outside folder. CA is the inner folder. And then Durham College is the inner folder. And you can see when I do that, I have main.java, where if I look there, I have my code. Okay, so that's how it works. I also have extraneous project resources, IDEA, which is for Intellij. But let's suppose I only wanted to use this part and you were using something like Netbeans or something else, some other IDE. I could literally just take the main.java file and import it into one of those other IDEs, if you like those better, and I have it there. I also have an out production folder, and what this does is the main class. Notice it's a my main class is actually an executable, something that is binary. All right, so I have that part here too. Okay, so those kind of things, and IML into the intermediate language stuff that I need to compile my program. So this is what I get inside of my OOP3200 resource. Nicholas, are you good now? Did you figure this out? So hopefully you did what I did. Awesome. All right, so that is this. If I want not to see this part, again, I can just click on this and it will disappear if I click it twice. So 1, 2. If I go to commit, you can see that comes up too. So I've got those two things come up now. Pull requests and commit. You can see the default change list that I have in here, right? All right. Oh, now we're going to challenge you guys. Okay, so challenge. I want to make a new class, right? Remember, everything is in classes with Java, right? Everything. So I'm going to right click onto ca.durham college here. All right, right click. And I'm going to go new. And notice there's a bunch of options for me to add new stuff. I'm going to add a new class, a new Java class here. And the new Java class I want to make, notice that there's options: class, interface, enum, annotation. Okay, these are the options. I'm going to choose class, and we're going to make the person class. This is our example for today. And this is a preview into classes and objects that we're going to do. All right, so my person class is what I'm going to type. And then we're going to do enter. It's going to make a brand new file called person.java, right? And it says, do you want to add the following file to Git? If you say yes, then what's going to happen is now it will start tracking the new file, person.java. We're going to say add. And we have a class. I'm just going to format the class as I like with curly braces underneath each other, right? And I'm going to start typing some properties. Okay, now let's see if you can intuit how this is done. I want to make some private properties. So I'm going to type the word private. Private is an accessor or an access modifier. All right, is the better way to say it. I want to have a couple of things, and I want to structure my variables the exact same way I do in C++ for now. All right, so I'm going to say there's two, and they have different types. I'm going to start typing the word string. So notice I just start typing S, and S for string came up, S with a capital S, right? And then I'm going to start typing the name, m_name variable. All right, so that's how you declare a variable. Private, we'll do the same thing with int. Notice that I'm just typing int. And notice it says integer, and there's also int lowercase. I'm going to choose int lowercase here. Notice that S string and int lowercase. If I try to do this for string, it's going to give me an error. But if I did this for string, because string is a complex class, that's what it is, it's okay. So int though is a primitive, so I'm okay with typing this, right? Int m_age, right? So those are the two variables. By the way, it also says add constructor parameters. Not yet. We can do that with this too, right? Add constructor parameters. It also says convert to thread local. Change access modifier. You can change to whatever you want. What I also want is if I right click on the name, I'm going to pull this out right now for you. I can go refactor, and there's a couple things I can do. here's something that I want. I want getters and setters, right? I want getters and setters. Well, I can refactor, rename it, or if I go to generate, right, it'll say generate what? I want to generate getter and setter, or one of the others. Let's do the getter and setter. I want to generate the getter and setter for my string name. And then it says, which ones do you want? I want it for this. I can also choose the other one. Let's choose both. Why not? All right. And then press OK. I just use Shift for that. And then boom, you have your getters and setters, guys. We're going to be doing this throughout the entire semester, right? I'm not going to do extra work if I don't have to. One thing I don't like is where the getters and setters get populated. I personally like to put all my variable declarations at the top of my file. This is just my style that I want. So this would be something like private instance variables. That's what they are. And these are public properties. Also, I'm not sure, I don't like the style that these are written in, so we can modify the style later on. When I do, I can change the way that things are generated with the structure, but this is the way I like it. Notice it's the same that you've seen before, right? So when we have getter, a get, and set. One thing I don't like, because I put M in the beginning of my names for private, I also got M name. I don't like that. So I'm going to just, again, I like name like this. And that happened because of the way I named things. So set name, set age, get age, and set age. Those are the only things that I have to change, right? But the rest, we're good to go. All right. So again, they're just methods that we've got here. All right. So I got getters and setters, and now I need a constructor. Hey, let's use the generate stuff again. So right-click anywhere. I'm going to go to generate, and I'm going to generate my constructor. All right, generate my constructor. It says, cool. What is my constructor going to be used for? Notice it says, here is this. I can click none. Let's select none. If I do, I get a constructor that has no parameters. Right, so I'm going to kind of take this constructor. I don't like the constructor where it is. Again, you can click anywhere where you want the stuff to appear. I just clicked it at the top. I'm going to go down below my properties and paste it in. Again, I don't want my curly braces next to the declaration. I want them on top of each other like this. Right? That's just me. And for my person, by default, here's my default parameter values. I want name to equal to nothing. Right? So let's say unknown. And I want age to be start off at 0. So unknown 0. So if I don't declare anything by default, my name is going to be unknown and my age is going to be 0. Cool. Let's continue with, and let me just get out of using Teams for a second, because Teams I should be also quit that. There we go. And let's continue. So I want to make another constructor. Again, I'm down in here, right click, and I'm going to click generate, and it's going to say generate constructor. Now I can choose both parameters, right? And I press OK. It's going to actually put the parameters in place too. Guys, it's a beautiful thing, right? I wish C# had this kind of stuff in C++, right? It'll make our lives easier. Well, it kind of does, but it doesn't suggest constructor parameters. So this is part. And the other one is, let's do the next one. So there's this one, but what about if I only take one or the other? I can do that too. So now I have, I can create as many constructors as I want. So generate constructor only for string. And then let's do the other one. Generate constructor only for name, for int, or for age. So now you have several constructors. I'm going to talk about this in a second. And the way you want to do this, right, is age. If I don't have a constructor that comes in for age, then we're going to set up age as, we're going to initialize age as something. Notice it says the keyword this. Not required. It's explicit, but we can totally use it. It's like self in other languages. This is also in both C# and C++. This refers to the variable itself that's part of the class variable or class method. And the same thing goes with age. If I only have age but not string for a name, then you know what? Let's make the name be unknown. So we'll put that in there as well. So now we've got all the different cases that are reasonable for our we'll make everything use. Since we're using this, we might as well use this for everything, right? Kind of thing. Okay, so just being consistent. That's why I did that. But you don't need to. So notice I have like several constructors now, right? And this is how we do overload. This is how we do optional variables. So now I have an option when I create the person class, an object of the type person, right? That I can choose to have nothing and accept some defaults. I can choose to have name and age, right? Notice that it says mname and mage. Not really a fan of this structure in terms of naming. I'd rather have name and age. It's going to pick the default names and ages. So here I'm just going to go and rename just a couple things. Hey guys, it's easier to destroy than to build, right? And here it's easier to modify if I need to. So this is way easier than for me typing everything by hand. And you know, as an example, as opposed to having it all generated for me. Scaffolding is also a great thing to do. I'm in support of scaffolding. Why? Because it makes so I can make my classes quickly, right? Which is what I want to do. So this is all the stuff that you should know already, and you should know the difference between public properties, private instance variables, and constructors, right? So these are all your constructors. So let's put an area there that says constructors. Okay. Finally, we need a method, right? So we'll make methods. And under the methods area, and let's put a space in here so it doesn't think that it's a comment. Please enter an extra space, and I'll talk about Javadoc in a second. Under methods, let's make a says hello method. So again, can I generate a method? I mean, I generated everything else. What about methods? Can I go generate? And well, I have a couple of them. I have a getter, setter. I have all this stuff. I also have this, a toString method, right? There's also something called override methods. Let's go to override methods that I can generate. I can generate my toString method. I can generate my clone method. I can generate my equals method and my hash method. Let's do my toString method. I want to generate this one. So, and it says copy Javadoc and insert an @override. These are important. We're going to do this later. But I'm going to press OK to this. Whoa, I get all this documentation, right? If I said copy Javadoc, right? This tells me how the toString method works, right, from my code. I don't need all of this, right? So let's get rid of it. I want to generate the Javadoc by myself, and I'll talk about that in a second. One thing to note is I've got an overridden method. This is a method that is just like we do an override for the toString method in C++ or C#. We have the same thing because all classes derive from a superclass object, right? And here, whenever I want to access the superclass in Java, I use the super keyword. All right, so that's different in terms of, instead of using base, we use super. So again, this is pretty cool. And I'm using toString, but I don't want the toString method that's default. I want to make my own. So remember, when I want to say my name, or I want to specify what the person information is, I want to kind of create maybe a string. So let's do that. So we'll go string. We'll do the same thing we did in C++. We'll say output string, right? We'll set it to nothing, and it'll start giving us code hinting in a second, all right? And what I want is my output string plus equals to, and I want to start off with the name, which we're going to concatenate with name, and my output string plus equals to age. There's different ways, by the way, to do this, which we're going to concatenate with age. If I want a new line character, I can add it in, right? One thing I don't want in this case, because it's a toString, I don't know what's going to happen with it, so I'm probably just going to add a space here, right? So that way I can say name and then age here. It's all in the same line. I'm not going to introduce a new line character because this way it can be done with something that's consuming toString. So here I'm just going to return output string. Very similar to what we've done in C and C++. So this is your first little method we've made, right? toString method. I want to document this, so I'm going to do / and then I'm going to use 2 asterisk characters. And notice I'm going to press in the, now it says once I do that, let's do that again. So once I press double / it says here, remove dangling comment, replace with block comment, right? Or if I put 3, kind of thing, it doesn't do anything. But if I put 1 and 2 and then press enter, nothing happens. If I put 2, if I press 2 and press enter, it actually does this. So let me go back to do this again. So again, if I press / and then 2 asterisks and then press enter, I get this. And this, my friends, is the beginning of a Javadoc. And what a Javadoc does is it talks about any parameters that your method has by default and what it returns. This returns a string type, right? So we can put that in curly braces, string. It returns a string. And we can say this method overrides the built-in toString method and returns the person properties, right? So this is what this does, right? We've talked about this. And now what I want to do is I want to use the toString method, right, as an example later on. We also want to have another method that I want to create called, again, it's going to be public. It's going to return void, and this time it's going to say says hello. Let's try that. So it says hello, right? Notice it's the S is lowercase here, and this is the default. Says hello. Okay, in my says hello method, right? And again, if I did a Javadoc, so again it's / and then 2 asterisks and enter, right? Notice that there is no return type. I could put a return type of my own by using @return and then void. Right, you can do that. I think void with a capital V, if I'm not wrong. And this, what it's going to do is we're going to make some information about this, what this says hello method does. This method tests the person class and returns a simple message to the console. All right, so we're going to say that this is going to use the system. So we're going to say system.out.println, and we're going to say in here, we're going to say the name of the person. So this.m_age, our name, and then plus says hello, right? Which we've seen before. This is nothing that's new. There, we have a couple of methods, right? And we have some properties. Let's now make use of it. But before we go there, hey, we've just added a brand new file. Great place to put this up on GitHub. So again, let's go to VCS. By the way, you can also go to commit here and do it, right? But I want to show you the long way. So you go to VCS, I'm going to go to commit. It'll pop open this panel again, right? And notice it says the person class, the person.java has been accessed. We can change our commit message. By default, it's the last one you entered. So I'm going to put in something like added the person class. Okay. I want to click commit, but I also want to select down here where it says commit and push. I have an option for this now because I have a remote defined. So I'm going to choose commit and push. And now it's in one step. It says no errors, 1 warning found. Would you like to review them? Just commit and push. And then it says, where do I want to push it to? I want to push it to my master branch through the origin remote. I'm just going to click push. And then what's going to happen is it's going to complete its push. Notice it's working up here and pushed 1 commit to origin master. Let's close this off. And let's take a look at our GitHub now and see what we have. So if I go to GitHub and refresh, it says that added the person class. I can go to my Durham College and notice I have here main.java and person.java, and you can see the person.java class right in here. Okay. Again, pretty straightforward, guys. I'm just doing this so that it's kind of an intro to what we're doing. I'm going pretty slow so that hopefully you guys are able to do what I'm able to do. Great. So now let's go into project, right? And then go to main. Let's use the person class. So I'm double clicking on main here to come in here. And I want to use the person class. I don't have to import it. It's part of the ca.durham college package namespace. Guess what? It's inside the same folder. I got nothing to import. I just got to use it. So that's pretty cool. Let's take this system.out.println line away. Let's take out this write code here. Let's refactor our class so that it's structured the same way I like. You can do it your way. And inside of our main, let's start declaring stuff. So I want to say, well, I have a person of type, we're going to call this person, right? And I want to make it equal to a new person. Guys, don't panic because this is normal for Java. If I open it up, it says these are the options I have. Int age, string name, or string name and int age, or no parameters. Those are the different options I have here. Why am I not getting code hinting? Like, why is it not telling me which one I should do and whatever? Because I didn't put any Javadoc inside the person class. We're going to remedy that, right? So let's put this on hold for a second and go back to the person class. So in the person class, what I can do is each of my constructors can have its own Javadoc. So I want to do here. Notice it lit up just now because by default, it's seeing this default constructor as the only one that's being used. So I'm going to say something like this constructor, the default constructor, we'll say the default constructor sets name to unknown and age to 0. All right, so we kind of set that up, right? And what if I did this? If I saved it now and go back to main, and if I start typing, right? Do I get the code hinting that I'm looking for, right? So let's try that again. So I'm going to start typing new person, and it says next tip. So it says person, and it says ca.durham college. It doesn't really give me that, right? So it doesn't give me like how to use this thing. Even when I open it up, it just gives me this. So let's just do the name and age. I can choose one by clicking. So I want to age and name, right? Or for example, I say something like my name. Look at that. I'm getting these code hintings like we did in ReSharper. Tom, and my age, we'll make a fake age of 40, right? And we can kind of stop this from happening. Let's run this thing and see what happens. So run. Everything is good. Process finished with exit code of 0. That's good. And let's do something with it. So I'll say person dot, and you can see that get age, set age, toString, whatever. Let's do a says hello. Notice again, says hello. It doesn't really give me any code hinting, right? So it's not like I can hover over and do something. But take a look at when I hover, what it does. It does give me it right here. It says, if I hover over, it says, this is how you use it. This method tests the person class and returns a simple message. How about if I hover over here? It says public constructor, but there's no message. It says contract pure. Why? Because I didn't use the default constructor. If I use the default constructor that has a Javadoc, and if I hover over, it says this is the default constructor sets name to unknown and age to 0. All right, so this is where that Javadoc stuff is really important. All right, so let's do this and run and see what we get if we get the thing we're looking for. And it says, hey, Tom says hello. Here's our first program, guys, that actually we ran and we made a class. All right, let's put this up on GitHub. So there's some really cool stuff. On the top right, there's also this. Take a look. There's this, which is update project. There's this, which is commit. There's this, which is push. So you actually have your little quick hit stuff on the top right corner. I'm going to use this one, which is commit. So I'm going to click commit. It's going to take me to my commit window. By keeping this window up, I can always lower it by going like this. And then it says, instead of added person to class, I modified all these things. I tested the person class in main, which is the next thing I did. So tested person class in main, right? these are things that I modified. I'm going to click commit and push. And it's going to allow me to do, it says review. If I want to review warnings, let's review what the warnings are. It says warning, return is not allowed here. So if I go here to return, where it says it doesn't like this Javadoc, right? This part here. Okay, so I can remove it. So I can kind of say, okay, well, there's no return because I'm returning void. Let's move it. Okay, it's not allowed. This is what it's looking for. Cool. Okay, cool. I've done my my modifications, and let's just commit again. And it says commit and push. Push. Okay, we're pushing off. It's going to commit these 3 files. I'm pushing it off, and we're good to go. Awesome. And if I go back online, let's go back to here, and if I refresh, and you can see now if I go to the main, it says tested person class in main, and you can see stuff up online in red, things that I've removed or changed. In green, things that I've added or modified, right, are here, right? And it's the same thing that you'll see locally when I look at my stuff. So let's go to ICE7, and you can see now that I have inside my objects this main class. Main has the entry point, and this is weird that it spaced it out like this. Did I do that locally? Let's take a look. Maybe I did inadvertently. So let's take a look. Maybe I did that. And let's go into my main. Nope. Just the way it went up to GitHub. All right, so that's pretty cool. I think these are all things that you've been able to, you've seen before. This is not something that should be new to you in any way. One thing to note is, again, if I go to Git down on the bottom here, here's my Git. It talks about any kind of issues or a problem. As an example, if there's any issues here, that's kind of my Git log. If I go to any problems, it'll come up here. As an example, build. This is kind of showing you what the build process is. So it talks about the build process as every time I run this thing, it runs through this build process, right? So that's what this is. Messages, so warnings, right? As an example, so this is something that will be removed in future messages, right? Again, here's my structure so far. You can see that this is the structure of my class. This is really cool. I get the class outline of my person class. Take a look at that. So this is all my methods, and I can jump to one of these methods right here in my structure, almost like a quick jump to get to any of the methods from here. This is a great little feature. Also available in C# and C++, but not as used, right? It's this right here for me. So sometimes I want to work on a particular method. I just click onto it, right? Here's my commit, like we did before, right? And here's my project files, like we had before. So I think this is kind of a good tour of the IDE, and to give you a sense of how things are done. Guys, this is what I want you guys to put up on your ICE 7. If you followed along, you've satisfied my requirements. There's really nothing else for us to do in terms of what we're doing today. However, let's finish off our little PowerPoint. Make sure that there's nothing else we want to add. All right, so we talked about the Java class library. There's 4,000 plus in Java 7 and 8. Lots of different extension classes that are included. You can see that these are different packages that we can tap into for different functionalities. All right here. And there's a second part to this PowerPoint from pages 16 to 23, very small PowerPoint, which talks about primitive data types in Java and everything else. We know the primitive data types. They're the same as what you've used in C++, so nothing different here. And one thing that changes is const is no longer a keyword that you can use in Java. You need to use final. So that's different between Java and C#, C++. There is no const. All right, so it's final. If you see final, it means const. Again, little changes. Arithmetic operators are the same. Assignment operators, the same. Comparison operators, the same. Increment and decrement operators the same. It's because Java is C influenced, right? So because Java is C influenced, has the same structure. Once you've learned C++, Java, C# is easier to learn. However, if you go the other way, if you learn Java first and then you did C++, good luck. It's really hard, right? So the math class is also something that's built in. You can see that there is, it's in the java.lang library, right? And if I start typing things like ABS or something like that, min, max, ceiling, floor, round, and so on, these kind of calculate things for you within the math library. And here's an example of how to use an enum, which is very similar. Now here, the enum was written in the class. I don't recommend writing enums in the class like this, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I recommend making an enum class that's separate, all right, which is what we're going to do in a future exercise. You can use multi-line comments. Javadocs are here, and the most important part is what to add in to Javadocs. Okay, so let me just zoom in here. So author. If I want to add a Javadoc, usually you put this in the beginning of your code file, right? As an example. You can also put return, and you can use C, all the same things that we've seen before, and version, the version of the code. All right. So if you want to put version 0.01, you can do that. So where do you put this stuff? I mean, obviously you don't want to put author in every method. My recommendation for you guys when you do your commenting is at the top of the file. So if I go back to here, and if I go to main, at the very top of the file, you can put in a Javadoc, right? And you want to put @author, and then who the author is. That would be your name, right? And then, you can put one thing that doesn't come up as an example is it doesn't give you a lot of notes. You can say C, since, hidden, and deprecated. The way I got this as an example is I pressed command space, control space bar brings up those things. So if I didn't have author in here and I wanted a Javadoc, if I press control space with nothing, it wouldn't give me anything. But if I press and then control space, it gives me all of these things, right, as an option. I want to put author again, which is just undo, because I'm not going to type all that out again. And then we can say something like version, let's say 0.0.1, right? And then if we had date, right? Deprecated comes up, date doesn't. I could put that in there. I can put whatever I want, right, in the header, but this would be minimum. If you wanted to put student ID, it doesn't compute. I can't just go student ID, right, and do something. I can't do that, right? Well, I can. It just will be ignored because this creates an XML equivalent to it. But you could put this. You could put student ID, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Whatever your student ID is, right? You could put that up there, and it's totally fine. And you can put more description of what this file is about and so on. Okay? So that's totally fine. All right. So yeah, questions around Java, the Intellij IDEA IDE, or the way we put this up on GitHub. Let me just do my last push because I just modified this. I added some comments to this file. I can also add comments to the person file. Double clicking, I can go to the top here and add comments to the top of this file. Put the same thing. Actually, let's just copy paste. Right? We can also put things like date modified and all that kind of stuff. I like to put those things in there in the person file. So things like version 0.0.1. We could put date. It's not required, and it won't compute. You can put stuff in here that doesn't compute at all, right? And if I said something like date, is today's date, which is November the 4th, 2020, you can do that, right? Now, one thing to note is if I press save, right, everything is good. If I had a problem under messages, it's going to come up and it's going to say something that's not allowed, right? But you can put whatever you want, okay? Let's put that in there too on the other side, just because date is an important thing. One more thing to note is the annotation. And if I ran this code, right? So if I go here and run it now, everything is good. If I have messages, new messages, they'll come up here. If there's anything that has to come up, let's go to where it says at return. It says there is no return type. It's going to try and figure out the last place where this message was coming from. There is no message that's here, right? Because it's going to 65 right here, the closest area where there's a message. You can also put in Javadoc for each of your stuff, each of your properties, which is no problem, or constructors. Notice only that this one lit up because this is the one we use. We never used this one so far. So you'd have to do some more documentation in here. All right, let's put this last push to GitHub. So I'm going to go to here, check mark, which is going to say something like, and I'm going to hide this, and I'm going to say something like updated comment headers. I'm just going to commit this and do it separately. It says review the warnings. Let's review the warnings. It says main, and in this I can look at both warnings. It says dangling Javadoc, and this is because it doesn't know what this is for. Okay, it's like kind of sitting there at the top of your file, right? Again, what you could do is you could put it closer to the top. Same thing goes with this. Still not going to really do anything. But again, we can update comment headers. It says review. It says, would you like to review them? Review. And then you can look at what it says. Dangling Javadoc. It's still going to point to the same thing because it hasn't been resolved. It doesn't like these. Right. We'll come back into this in a sec. You can also use other things too. You can also, instead of using a Javadoc like this, you can use something that isn't a Javadoc. One thing it'll do is it'll say remove dangling comment or replace with block comment. If you replace with block comment, it's not going to complain anymore. And now you can put whatever you want like normal, right? So that's kind of what it's going to do, right? So I'm just going to undo those changes. So you can replace them. And then of course I just want to push. So I want to push to my origin master. If there's any commits that are selected, then those are the ones that I want to push to. Now there's nothing that's selected. Pushing would be useless. So again, I want to commit. I want to commit everything. Now that I've got a commit happening, right? I finally did my commit. Then I can push. Now you can see that there's update comment headers. That's a commit that's ongoing. I can push that, and that's the last push I'm going to do. Guys, if you followed along, you don't need to delete anything. You know, when you hand it in, all I'm looking for is a link to your GitHub repo is what I'm looking for. And again, when we start off, okay, as an example, if I was to shut this down, 1 sec, let's say shut this down and restart. So let's say, okay, I'm done. It says, are you sure you want to exit? Yes, I do. Goodbye. And then I want to restart Intellij. What happens is there's a setting that starts us off in the last project that I was working on. This is okay. But if I want to get to the beginning, let's say, for example, if I want to go to File, Close Project, then it'll take me back to this, right? When we start here, you can see on the left that I can start my project. This is how you would start a project from the last time. I click onto this, and it'll load the project like before. All right, so recap. No zip cut. No, I don't want a zip. Just a link to your GitHub, please. Okay? So if it says zip, just a link to GitHub. That's enough. Oh, by the way, if you're going to send me a zip file, that might be a cool exercise to do too. First you shut down Intellij, please. And just so you can, so I can show you how to do it. I'm going to bring up my File Explorer here. Sorry, it just appeared on the other screen. Under File Explorer, if I go to Durham, that's interesting. if I go to OOP3200, then you can see that I have OOP3200 F2020 lesson 8. I'm shut down. This is what the actual project looks like as an example outside of the IDE. So it's kind of not exactly what you see is what you get, but this is exactly what's happening when you see on GitHub. So when I download the project, I can literally just import it inside of my framework and get to go. I want to right click, nothing to delete, right click here, and I want to zip it up. So 7-zip, and I want to zip it up, to less than 8. And that's all it would take. Notice that the file compression shows me it's only 59K. Inside here, is there something I can run? Well, if I go to out in my production, there is these two items. There's no executable. Notice that there isn't one, right? Why? I haven't created one. We haven't done that step where I've gone and created an executable. I've just got intermediate files. All right, just letting you know. Okay, so you don't need a zip, but if you want to practice, literally you just right click and using 7-zip, zip it up, and we're good to go. Again, if I get your link to GitHub, I'm good for today. Next week might be different. Any questions or concerns about Java? So here, welcome to Java. This is Java 101. You know a lot more than you think you know. And my homework to you, again, this is no marks for this, but homeworks to you is this. Try and recreate some stuff you've done in C++. Try and make your vector class. Try and make something that you know how to do. Fool around with the IDE on your own if you have a chance to do so. And try and do the same kind of things that you did in C++. See if you can accomplish the same things using your intuition as a programmer. If you can, it'll go a great way, or go a long distance in terms of how you are understanding the language. Guys, that's all there is for me this week. You've done your in-class exercise. I will see you guys next week on Wednesday when we'll resume. Next week, just to recap, is when we do our first lab. So the only thing I'd ask you guys to do today, if you haven't had a chance to do it already, is form groups, please. Because your lab, which is happening next week, which is Java Lab 1, which is worth 6% of your final grade, must be done in groups. Otherwise, guys, take care. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week. I'm just going to stop recording here.